Who could have seen that coming? And also some sympathy for a woke. We'll get to all of that and more. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Together, we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. The show starts right now. Stephen Colbert, future former late night host, as the end of his show has been stipulated by the network that says, hey, we're not going to do this anymore, but for some reason is letting him continue to talk on TV, is in a heated battle with reality. He says it's against the Trump administration. It actually is with the rules that have been in place for almost 100 years, but I'm not entirely sure if even he knows that himself. But before we get to that story, tpt@tpusa.com is the email address if you'd like to send along your thoughts, comments, concerns, even criticisms. I say this every single day. If your email is nasty, disgusting, bigoted, and just downright vile, you have a better chance of being read on the show. And I will hold true to that, but I do think we got the most nasty, vile. I'm going to have to summarize and characterize this email because the guy sending the email is correct, but it's just too vulgar and too disgusting. And I can't actually read it, although I agree with every word. Kind of, maybe, allegedly. But tpt@tpusa.com if you'd like to be included in our mailbag segment, which is the last segment of the show. Also, leave a comment wherever it is that you happen to be watching. And like I said, if it's vile, disgusting, bigoted, and downright nasty, you actually have a better chance of being read here on the show, as evidenced by a future emailer that we will read during our mailbag segment. tpt@tpusa.com is that email address one more time. And I'd love for you to send your thoughts on this emerging story. Well, emerging, it's been emerging over the last couple days. Future former late night host Stephen Colbert is lashing out against the Trump administration and also his own network, and not really sure who he's mad at, and the FCC and the guy who runs the FCC and the new guidance, and the new guidance isn't actually new guidance, it's in place for a long. We're going to explain the entirety of it, as well as bring some perspective that is so needed in these turbulent times. Is it an affront to free speech? Spoiler alert, no. What is happening is Stephen Colbert pre-taped an interview with a guy named James Talrico, who is a lib from Texas who is running for Senate. In other words, a nobody. Right? He doesn't have a position that has any national interest. I think he's a state legislator there in Texas. It's not like he's involved in some story. It's literally interviewing a candidate on network television. Now, that's fine, but the problem is there are fairness guidelines that you have to adhere to in order to obtain the license to have your show on the network that is public access for the American population. Now, the lawyers at CBS allegedly, and I say all this allegedly, this is all open in the air, but I guess because lawyers are involved, I might as well maintain the allegedness. Allegedly advised Stephen Colbert not to broadcast the interview because of FCC equal time risks. They don't want to be on the other side of the rules that have been in place for a while. We'll get to that in just a second. So they said, maybe don't air this. Now, according to Newsweek, Stephen Colbert himself said that CBS lawyers didn't actually consult him before denying that he was prohibited from airing the interview with the Senate candidate in Texas, which is odd because it kind of looks like everybody's consulting each other. And if they didn't consult him, why did he pull the interview and post it to YouTube? Anyways, all of that to be said, the interview got moved to YouTube. It does have a couple million views. And Colbert went on CBS to blast the lawyers, blast the FCC, blast the Trump administrations, called the CBS lawyers' denial a bunch of crap in a clip that we'll play you in just a quick second, and accused the network of caving to the Trump administration. CBS's response is, they didn't outright prohibit it. They just provided legal guidance, which Colbert said, no, they didn't. So there's a whole big mess here going on. Why is the mess going on? Well, because recent FCC guidance from the chairman of the FCC, Brendan Carr, said that in the lib media world, he's narrowing the bona fide news category that is exempt for any candidates from the Fairness Act. Okay, so let me explain that just a little bit more. In Section 315 of the Communications Act of 1934, a station who gives airtime to one qualified candidate must also then offer equal opportunity to all opponents in the same race. No format, no favoritism. It has to be equal. Okay, why? Well, because those networks, like I said, get a license from the FCC, a license from us to use public airwaves to broadcast their shows, and we've put in some stipulations. Hey, if you want the license to use the public airways, you have to be fair. And trust me, we'll get into the idea of fairness and whether or not anybody on network TV is fair. But for what we're talking about right now, this applies broadly to TV and radio. It does not apply to cable news or streaming like on YouTube. Probably the most famous recent example of this is the last presidential cycle when SNL on NBC tried to sneak in a sneaky Kamala Harris bit into their SNL skit. It was a skit where I think Maya Rudolph, who plays Kamala Harris, was looking in the mirror, and it actually was Kamala Harris, and everyone went, hooray! And then she went on to lose an exorbitant amount of states and not win a single swing state, but that's beside the point right now. Well, the FCC, even the Biden FCC, was like, hey, this isn't like a news show, so it's a commentary show, and if it's a commentary show, then you have to give equal time. They ended up then having to, by threat of the FCC under Biden, give Trump a big, long commercial, and he chose to do that commercial on the next Sunday right before Sunday Night Football. In other words, the whole fairness thing still applies, and it still applies on both sides of the aisles. Now, there are some key exemptions to that if it is bona fide news, if it is a news show, and let's just say hypothetically a candidate is involved in an actual big bona fide news story. That's exempt. If the candidate is involved in a news story, you don't have to bring in the other candidate who's not involved in the news story to comment on the news story or really give his or her political pitch. The exemptions include newscasts, news interviews, such as like Meet the Press, because a lot of those times people have sitting Congress members or sitting senators on the show, and then they interview them for whatever amount of time, but they're actual legislators. So those exemptions exist for newscasts, news interviews, and documentaries, or like on the street, on the spot coverage, right? If a congressman who's running for governor somewhere gets stopped on the street and it's kind of live and it's all that's exempt from this whole fairness idea. Recently, though, the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, issued guidance that challenges some of the exemptions that were previously in place for late night comedy shows. Now, the question is, why was that an exemption to begin with? Did anybody think that Jimmy Kimmel or even Jimmy Fallon or Stephen Colbert were news shows? I mean, yes, they comment about what's going on in the world, but if you get your news from late night network TV, you might have explained several of the problems that we have in this country. Now, because it's clearly not news, the FCC's new guidance says, hey, this isn't news, and therefore the fairness clause applies to you. Because of that, CBS's lawyers said, hey, you can't do this interview with this candidate unless you do interviews with other candidates, which then prompted Stephen Colbert to respond in lengthy monologues, but I think this is the gist of it and how he feels about it. Cut 6.
I am grateful to have worked for CBS for the last 11 years and worked with George and David and Amy and everyone at the network, the Sheldons of every age, the Matlocks of every sex. I'm just so surprised that this giant global corporation would not stand up to these bullies. Come on, you're Paramount. No. No, you're more than that. You're Paramount Plus. Plus what? I guess we're all going to find out pretty soon. And for the lawyers to release this without even talking to me is really surprising. I don't even know what to do with this crap.
Now, he's talking about the lawyer's statements, and honestly, I don't know if they talked to him about it. But the interesting thing is, why would they talk to him about it? He's an outgoing future former late night show talk show host. Why would they care what he has to say or think? I don't even know why they're continuing to let him on their airwaves. Now, you may be wondering, okay, well, how does a network get its licensing from the FCC? Well, they have to meet a bunch of different requirements. That licensing gets renewed every 8 years. President Trump has said, hey, maybe we should look into some of this licensing if the media outlets that we give permission to as the people of the United States of America are being entirely lefty slanted. Maybe we should consider not giving them the licenses. They have to adhere to these requirements. They must serve the public interest. It must be convenient and necessary. They must have diverse programming, community service. They must have public comment period and challenges if possible. And they're up for FCC review. Now, the consequences in some cases can be fines, warnings, conditional renewals, or it could include non-renewal or revocation entirely, in which I would say good, because fairness in the public airways is absolutely necessary. It prevents things like the media rigging elections, which they have done in the past and can do in the future. And it reinforces the idea that you have to be fair to everybody who's involved, mainly because all of the late night show hosts, the newscasters, the writing rooms, the producers are all libs. Just a really brief standpoint here. These have been in practice now for a while now, over the last 13 months when President Trump took office. This is not the first kind of update to the FCC guidelines. In approving the Skydance Paramount merger, because we don't need to get into that entirely, but the Trump administration said, hey, you have to prove that you're being non-biased here. So as a part of that merger, they said, hey, there's got to be DEI elimination, because that's racism. You have to have viewpoints of diversity, and you have to have a bias monitor in CBS News. And this is just one of the many different approaches the Trump administration has taken to say, hey, you have to be fair if you're going to use the public airways. Now, to get into some of the statistics and numbers around, well, is network TV absolutely fair? The answer, of course, will be shocking to you. No, it is not. There is a lefty slant pretty much everywhere, and everybody knows that it's there. On the late night talk show host, and they don't even call it talk show news, right? It's just late night TV. 90%, according to recent studies, recent analysis, of the political jokes punch at the libs. I'm sorry. No, they punch at the conservatives. This is not, nobody is unaware of this. Why am I using a double negative? Everyone is aware of this. There's an overwhelming guest imbalance. The overwhelming liberal presence in recent years has counted 196 libs to like 2 conservatives. And just so we're clear too, the conservatives that do make it on to Jimmy Kimmel's show or Stephen Colbert's show are not like actual conservatives. This is like, oh, Liz Cheney counts as a conservative. Adam Kinzinger counts as a conservative. Like, give me a break with those numbers. So even as slanted as they are, the 2 conservatives, I almost guarantee you, are like Joe Scarborough. Okay, well, no, he was a former conservative, and now he's a crazy woke person. So he counts as the conservative. So we'll go ahead and check that box. The bottom line is that pretty much everybody is aware that the mainstream, lamestream network news, network late night talk show host media is entirely left-wing slanted. And all this is the FCC trying to say, hey, let's slow your roll here, and let's make sure that the laws that are in place and that have been in place for over 90 years are actually adhered to. The last thing that I think is actually quite interesting and also quite telling is this. Allegedly, the CBS attorneys allowed an out for Stephen Colbert. Hey, you did this interview with this Senate candidate. It doesn't comply with the fairness rules, so you can't put it on the show unless you provide what the fairness clause dictates, equal opportunity to all the Senate candidates. Now, that includes, obviously, a couple conservatives, but it also includes somebody that we know and loved, one Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman D, Texas, who's also running for Senate. Stephen Colbert then effectively said, I don't like that option. Rather than interview somebody who I really think is going to be damaging to the libs, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it on YouTube and pretend this is a whole free speech thing. Congresswoman Crockett responded to some of the allegations that, well, he could have just invited you, and here's what she said, cut 7.
We did receive information suggesting that the federal government did not shut down this segment, number one. That is my understanding, that the federal government didn't shut this down. Either Mr. Colbert or CBS decided to make this hit on the air. And this was because of a fear that the FCC may say something to them and that there may have been advice to just have me on, and then they could clear the issue. It was my understanding that someone somewhere decided we just don't want to do that, and instead we're going to just do it this way.
Oh, isn't it so delicious when libs start punching at each other? So the CBS lawyers say, hey, the whole fairness thing, this is going to be a problem unless you bring on Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who's also running for Senate, against the guy that you interviewed. And Stephen Colbert said, she's very, very stupid. And I don't want her representing my party. So, you know what? Yeah, we just go ahead. We won't air that interview with the other guy. We'll just put it on YouTube and make a big stink about nothing. Now, clearly, Jasmine Crockett understands that that's what happened, which I think is why she came out and said, this wasn't a Trump thing. This was a CBS thing, because they could have just had me on, and instead they didn't. Therefore, you know, by default, kind of attacking one of the lib propagandists extreme in Stephen Colbert. It's so delicious, the little infighting. And I either go with that or, I hate to see this, but it's good. It's hilarious. It's fun to see libs punching at each other. Kudos to the FCC, by the way, finally taking action here. Conservatives for far too long have just allowed the entirety of the media, the entirety of the academies, the entirety of culture as a whole be taken over by the libs. Even if there are guidelines and there are laws set up in the public interest saying you have to be fair, conservatives haven't had the guts in past administrations to do anything about it. Finally, Brendan Carr at the FCC and obviously President Trump is saying, we have these laws, maybe we should enforce them. Just like immigration, the communications rules exist for a reason, and that reason is that you don't want the public airways to be so slanted that the media can manipulate and rig an election. And it's been happening under the watch of the last several administrations. Finally, President Trump is saying enough is enough. Kudos to the FCC. I think if you have the ability, go ahead and contact your local congressman and say, hey, we approve of the FCC following the rules dictated by Congress that they should be required to follow. If you have any thoughts on that, tpt@tpusa.com. Again, this is a really interesting story because it's one of those where it's just like, yeah, we're clearly right here. Clearly the lib media is lefty slanted. And also, too, the idea that they're saying that's Colbert, that a bunch of people are saying this is an affront to free speech, is just so indicative of how they view their own little bubble that they exist in. Anything that we want to do, we should be able to do. And any stoppage to those things is clearly an attack on us. No, it's just the rules. It's just being fair about the rules. It's just enforcing what the law stipulates. tpt@tpusa.com is the email if you have any thoughts, comments, concerns about this. We have got to get to the point. Several stories that I'm very excited about, including several from Corruptifornia, as there often is, and a really interesting Obama story. We'll be right back after the break. Don't go away.
I dance to Rosalie. From powerhouse vocalist Natasha Owens, known for standout singles like Trump One and Somali Waltz, comes her brand new release, The Boss, released on Real America's Music. This is the direct response to Bruce Springsteen's recent release, The Streets of Minneapolis. While Springsteen once branded himself as a voice of the working class, The Boss gives a voice to everyday Americans and reminds listeners who truly shapes the future. The Real America's Voice audience has the power to move charts and shake the industry. Download it right now. Scan the QR code or search The Boss on iTunes. Push it up the charts. Make them notice. At Real America's Voice, we know that you want to be a part of something bigger. That's why we've teamed up with AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, to build a real community of folks who care about faith and our country's future.
There is no force on earth that can stop us from saving our country.
Want to be a part of this movement? It's easy. Just scan the QR code on your screen right now. That's right. Grab your phone and scan the QR code to join the AMAC and Real America's Voice family today. By scanning the QR code, you'll unlock exclusive content, connect with like-minded Americans, and be first in line for events that celebrate our shared values. So don't wait. Scan the QR code. Join us today and become part of a community that stands for faith, family, and freedom.
Real rights, they come from God.
With AMAC and Real America's Voice. Go ahead. Scan the QR code now.
I'm Andy M., and I love Real America's Voice, where my voice counts and your voice counts. That is America's Voice.
Flashosaurus in the chat. I love Real America's Voice because I can watch news being delivered to me live while I chat with the family I love.
Taken into the city town square, hung from their ankles, and cut them from groin to chin.
Wow, that was quite something. Anyway, I'm thinking of doing matcha today. The problem is I don't know whether they're iced or hot is what I'm feeling like. Get back to your barista job, ma'am. Also, you know, I mean, it goes without saying, we have, what, thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands examples of the tolerant and acceptful, joyful people being increasingly violent. If you didn't catch it, this they, them was talking about the fact that she doesn't want to see anybody from the conservative side of the aisle, I would presume. I think she's either talking about the Trump administration or ICE. She doesn't want to see any of them held accountable via trial. She'd like to take them to the public square and kill them. Okay. Thank you for that. They, them. Let's get to the point.
Get to the point. Get to the point.
First up, first point talking about today, no charges will be filed against the California High-Speed Rail Authority CEO Ian Chowdhury. DEA office says. So this is actually really interesting. Earlier this month, the CEO of the California High-Speed Rail Authority was arrested by Folsom Police February 4th on suspicion of misdemeanor domestic violence after an incident involving a juvenile victim occurred at his home. His fiance, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce her name. That's wild. Was also arrested on suspicion of misdemeanor violence for child endangerment at the same event. However, no charges were filed against either person. I don't want to get into speculation here, but clearly, if you are the CEO of the public authority of the California High-Speed Rail Authority, the public, it's a public system, right? It's not a private company. The California High-Speed Rail Authority is the one taking money from California taxpayers and you, federal taxpayers, putting it in a hole and lighting it on fire for the sake of, I don't know, climate or whatever, to build a train that won't ever exist. It's a public job. Now, for that job, the CEO, the guy who was arrested allegedly for domestic violence, who won't be facing any charges, I was very skeptical about that, but you got to be very tied in to have that job, makes a salary of approximately $560,000 a year. You know, I've said this a number of times about the California high-speed rail. I'll do it for half. I am willing to take less money to also not build a high-speed train. And I can do just as good of a job. I'll take $200,000 to run the California High-Speed Rail Authority. I can not build a railroad just as well as this guy who may or may not have abused his family members, allegedly. But he won't face any charges. But the arrest did happen earlier this month. I'll do it for half. Just for context, this guy makes over double of what Gavin Newsom makes to be the governor of the state. I think that's interesting, the fact that the public authority there in California, guy looks to be has to be very tied in, possibly beating up his family, but won't face any charge for it, allegedly. Next point, the feds launch a larger probe into California's unemployment fraud. We've talked about this a decent amount. It's been widely reported here in the state of California. I recognize that you're not here in the state of California, likely, although some of you are. We get several emails, tpt@tpusa.com, of people also behind enemy lines, not only in California, but other deep blue states around the country. But here in California, everybody knows that there is massive unemployment fraud among many of the other fraudulent things. Now, finally, the federal government looks to be turning its eye to the golden, also poopiest state. The U.S. Department of Labor has launched an investigation into California's unemployment insurance program, deploying a strike team to the state for the EDD, the Employment Development Department, to examine the financial issues and potential, and I use the quotes around potential because clearly it's more than potential, for fraud and abuse related to the pandemic era for funds totaling $290 billion with a B. In other words, a bunch of people stealing a bunch of money. Now, we've, again, talked about this quite a bit. There are cases, there's evidence to show that people who are incarcerated were getting unemployment money from the state because there were no safeguards involving what's going on at the state. But bigger conversation for a different time. Actually, we've already had that conversation. But bottom line, it is good to know that the federal government is freaking finally taking a look at this. Now, I don't know that this story is going to gain national attention immediately. We got an email the other day asking about what's happening going on to the Minnesota crime. They are still working on that as well as they are working on that here. A lot of this stuff takes time. Hopefully the Trump administration can get this wrangled up and we can have some good news in the next couple months. Next point, from blue state to good old blue state. The governor of Maryland, governor signs emergency legislation to ban 287G immigration enforcement agreements in Maryland. So we talked quite a bit about how the administration is looking for partnership at the local level. One, it's the law, and the Supremacy Clause says that the federal government has, last say over anything going on in the states, especially when it comes to things like immigration. It's constitutionally designated to the federal government to solve that problem. Now, in attempts to solve the problem that the previous administration and the administration prior to the first Trump administration of letting a gajillion illegals into the country, in order to solve that problem, the federal government is looking towards municipalities for some sort of partnership. Hey, I know this sounds crazy, but if you have somebody who's in the country illegally, who's arrested for a DUI, I don't know, rammed his car into a grocery store, several people injured, terrible situation, and I know you're just going to let him out, would you mind maybe letting us know? That'd be super helpful. Though they're doing stuff like that in Texas. The reason that Tom Homan said, yeah, we don't need the surge in Minneapolis anymore is because they secured some of those agreements. Anyways, all that is to say that is not the case around many parts of the country, including in West Virginia. Maryland Governor Wes Moore, who he should be on our radar. He's, I think, kind of the dark horse in the libs running for president in 2028. He's savvy. In my opinion, he's smarter than some of the other people, Governor Hairspray. And you got to watch out for him. He's kind of like the, not the underdog necessarily, but riding in as Gavin's getting all the attention. Then people are going to realize, oh, this guy's an idiot, and then may settle on the governor of Maryland. Anyways, the governor of Maryland signed an emergency legislation on February 17th, banning all of these agreements that allow local law enforcement to partner with federal immigration and customs enforcement, which seems stupid to me. The Supreme Court needs to rule on the sanctuary city thing. That is a massive problem that continues to beset many states, cities, local municipalities that refuse to work with the federal government on the federal government's job. And again, it's also safer for everybody involved for this to be the case. Last point, and I think this is really interesting, there was a really fascinating New York Times article. I mentioned I read the New York Times quite frequently, one, to punish myself for my sins that I've committed, but also because I know that other people don't read the New York Times. And it's good to know what the libs are doing. And also sometimes the New York Times does a pretty good job at reporting. This was a quite fascinating story. If you have the time to read it, it's really quite interesting, just as a perspective into what the libs were thinking pre-Trump won. The headline is Obama took on recession, healthcare, and Iraq. Again, pretending that this guy was just this amazing person, because they have to do that because they're the New York Times. What they didn't see coming was Trump. Now, this is a comprehensive oral history of the President Trump administration compiled by Columbia University's Insight Institute, released yesterday. And it features extensive interviews with advisors, officials, and others, which reveal that Barack Obama, while president, and his team, including Axelrod and a bunch of the other key players, were talking about all of their success. They were high-fiving each other. Look at how great we did over here. Look at how we ruined the healthcare system. Look at how we made ourselves look stupid on the international stage, which of course were all of their goals as libs. Look at how great we are. They're high-fiving each other, backslapping. This is fantastic. And completely missed the groundswell of American spirit that propelled President Trump to the presidency. There's 1,100 hours of interviews that are described. The administration was focusing again on all of their achievements and completely missed the populist uprising that propelled President Trump to win the presidency in what I still think is the most shocking political victory in U.S. history, but also maybe ever. Really actually fascinating read. Obviously, there's a lefty slant to it, but really interesting insight into the Obama White House. Had no idea any of this was coming, and well, they suffered the consequences of it. We got Trump 1, and now, thankfully, we are in Trump 2. That is Get to the Point. Several points we had to get to. If you'd like any of the links to any of those articles, send us an email, tpt@tpusa.com, or if you have any comments on any of that, also, tpt@tpusa.com. Leave a comment wherever it is that you are watching. If the comment or email is gross, disgusting, vile in all nature, we actually may read it here on the show. We'll be right back after the break. Don't go away.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
There's a light I've always followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer, in the moments I'm afraid. There's a whisper in the wind, and a story in the sky, when I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light. Follow the light.
For those who love great animated classics like The Lion King and Prince of Egypt, David is an awe-inspiring animated musical that depicts David as a spirited boy who fought lions, giants, and even betrayal, depicting how one boy's faith could lead him to be king of Israel. David will be released in theaters just in time for Christmas on December 19th. But your family can get a head start by watching the prequel to the film, Young David, which is streaming exclusively right now.
My choice! 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 My choice!
We have a theme on our comeback clips here of the peaceful, tranquil, definitely not violent, definitely not demon-possessed libs yelling whatever it is that they're yelling. That's fun. We should pray for her. Unfortunately, that they, them. I'm assuming it's a they. I don't know. I think all of them. Aren't they all they, thems? Suffering quite greatly and deserves our pity. It is time for the new segment that we do on this show where we go around the elected officials, the legislators of this country and of these municipalities, these states, as well as bureaucrats to discuss what they are saying in their own official business. This is official business. Our first iteration of official business comes from none other than Zoran Mamdani, which I actually think I may have... Nah, that's not how you pronounce it. It's Mamdani. Moron Zamdani. I don't... Email us, tpt@tpusa.com, with the phonetic pronunciations of how you pronounce Mamdani's name. It comes from the mayor, the socialist blockhead, mayor of New York City, in which he is faced with doing something that he never expected to do as mayor, which is govern. I actually think this is hilarious. Unfortunately, I feel terrible for my friends and those people that I love that live in New York City. It's going to be awful and terrible, but at the same time, it is another experiment that apparently has to happen every 20 years or so in a major American city that shows the rest of the country, oh, that doesn't work. Now, of course, Mayor Zamdani was never expecting to actually have to govern. He thought he could just ride the next 4 years with platitudes and saying very, very nice things about very, very bad people. But turns out that he has to do these crazy things called balance the budget. Now, as a part of all of the things that he's looking to do in the formerly greatest city in the world, the governor of the state, Kathy Hochul, said, I can't justify spending all this money here, so you're not going to get it. So in response to that, Mayor Mamdani took to the cameras to say, we have a problem. Houston, there's an issue. I don't know why I'm talking to Houston. I'm in New York City, but we're still reaching out. Houston, we have a serious problem. That problem is a massive massive budget deficit that they can't fill. And he's then giving examples as to what can happen. He says, first, obviously, we can tax the rich and businesses, which won't make them move out of the city at all. They'll just sit there and take it because that's what the smartest people in the world do. They just take it. Or what more likely will happen is this. This is Cut 9, Mayor Mamdani, talking about what's going to need to happen to get all of his socialist programs up and going. Cut 9.
At the heart of this path is a property tax increase. This would effectively be a tax on working and middle-class New Yorkers who have a median income of $122,000. The second path also requires us to raid our reserves. It would mean withdrawing $980 million from our city's rainy day fund in fiscal year 2026 and $229 million from the Retiree Health Benefit Trust in fiscal year 2027. These are steps that have been taken before, but only in moments of extraordinary external crisis. Mayor Bloomberg's response to the 2008 financial collapse, and Mayor de Blasio's response to the enormous revenue shortfall caused by the pandemic. We do not want to have to turn to such drastic measures.
Because what is the external response that's needed? What is happening that is so bad in New York City where you have to invoke what other mayors only invoked during an emergency right now? This is like one of those things that New York City is unfortunately very representative of Washington more broadly. Somehow, we went into more debt in times of peace than we did in World War I and II. Don't quote me on that. I'm just saying our debt has exploded in times of relative peace. Yeah, there have been skirmishes around the world, but we're not in a global war right now, and we still are blowing out the budget. And so in that same context, what is the existential external crisis that Ma'am Danny would use to justify taxing more in the city of New York? And not just taxing the rich, taxing like the average worker. I know $120,000 sounds like a lot, but in New York City, Manhattan specifically, that ain't nothing. And yet property taxes being increased by 10% is going to have a huge effect on those who have to pay it, especially those working families that are barely scraping by with the overwhelming taxes as they are. Now, in official business, as we'd like to keep to the official dialogue, the official verbiage of those in power, we go across the entire country to the mayor of Seattle, who was giving her first state of the city. Now, Katie Wilson is also a socialist, also apparently beset by the reality that, well, I have to govern too? I have to do things? This feels weird. I'm just used to posting Instagram stories about how much I like homeless meth heads. You mean I have to give a speech? And apparently that reality was realized by her when she walked on the stage. I kid you not. It looks like she goes to give the State of the City address, the big address from the mayor of Seattle that only happens once a year, and it looks like somebody told her about it 30 seconds before she walked on stage. This is real footage from the beginning of her State of the City. Cut 10.
Good morning. How are you all doing today? Okay. You ready for this? I don't think I've ever talked for as long as I'm about to talk, so we'll see how it goes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Sorry. Can you please? Technical difficulties. Okay. There. Okay. A little bit less. A little bit back the way you came. Back. Okay. Okay. That's good. Thank you. Okay.
So here, hold on. 1 second. I'm just going to get something out of my pocket. Wow. That was some, sorry. Producer, am I on full screen right? Oh, no, can we, all right, that's enough of that bit. You understand what I'm talking about here. This is the mayor of a city who apparently was unaware that she actually had to govern the city once she won the mayor's race somehow. And apparently that's what happens. You get somebody who literally looks like they rolled out of bed. Somebody said, hey, you have to give the State of the City today. She goes, what is that? I don't know, but you have to go on stage in 30 seconds. Okay, where's the most difficult spot on my clothes to put my speech? Oh, my right lower pocket inside the jacket? Yeah, let's go with that. But such is the nature of those who have no idea that governments actually have to do things. Now, there's another clip that we want to play from our other favorite socialist, but we don't have time to get to it. Maybe we'll get to it in official business tomorrow. I'd like to round off official business by, I don't know, a high note. This is President Trump recently talking about just this is just him being a sane person. Fine, we're going to end official business on a good note. This is Cut 12.
You know, our country's come back a long way, but it can only withstand so much, and we don't want to ever go through that again. We never want to have open borders again. We don't want to have men playing in women's sports. We don't want to have transgender for everybody. We don't want that. We want to have a great country with low interest rates, nice housing, great education, a strong military. The basics, yes.
I love the basics. That's it. That's all we want. Normal things that every country should want, every American should want for their country. That's it. Nothing crazy. Just don't want dudes beating up on women. We want a strong military. We want a strong border. We want a good economy. That's it. This has been Official Business. TPT@TPUSA.com is the email address if you'd like to send along your thoughts, comments, concerns, criticisms. Up next, probably a surprising take on Woke Wednesday. We'll be right back after the break. Don't go away.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
There's a light I've always followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer. In the moments I'm afraid, there's a whisper in the wind and a story in the sky. When I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light. Follow the light.
For those who love great animated classics like The Lion King and Prince of Egypt, David is an awe-inspiring animated musical that depicts David as a spirited boy who fought lions, giants, and even betrayal, depicting how one boy's faith could lead him to be king of Israel. David will be released in theaters just in time for Christmas on December 19th, but your family can get a head start by watching the prequel to the film, Young David, which is streaming exclusively right now on Angel. It's perfect for the entire family and has memorable music. So once you join the Angel Guild, you can start watching Young David right now and prepare the fam for the David film in theaters in December. And by joining the Guild, you'll guarantee 2 free tickets to see it. And it's a great value. Let's be honest, going to the movies isn't all that cheap. But if you're a member of the Angel Guild, not only do you get those 2 free tickets to David, but you'll now have access to every single film or TV series on Angel at your convenience anytime. So just go to angel.com/Rav and join there.
Through every storm, every moment of uncertainty,
Everybody needs to pray for Charlie Kirk right now.
Rav has stood strong.
We're not going to tolerate this stuff anymore.
Turn that anger into motivation to save this nation.
When we move together, there is power.
The cries of this widow.
Congratulations on paying off your house.
Thank you. I finally own my home.
I love that for you. Now pay property taxes.
Wait. For what?
For owning the home.
But I already paid for the home.
Yes, that was for the structure.
And the land?
That's rented.
For who?
Us.
For how long?
Forever.
And if I stop paying?
We take the house.
But I bought it.
Correct. And now you maintain it for us.
So this is renting?
No. This is home ownership.
So what did I actually buy?
A lifetime subscription with surprise price increases.
And what do I get with that?
The privilege of not being evicted this year.
Love it. 5 stars.
I have so much that I could say on this. I could probably I might play this late. I might play this tomorrow because there's so much to get into here with property taxes and what they go to and the increases that come on them. But we don't have time, and I do want to leave time for mailbag. So let's get into the Wednesday tradition. Today is Woke Wednesday. Thank you, highlighter jacket lady, for setting the tone on Woke Wednesday. Now, I've got probably a bit of a surprising take here. I'm going to play you a social media clip. Now, if you don't follow myself or the show or Turning Point on social media, you are missing out because you should be, because you're going to get fantastic content like the clip I'm about to show you, where we make fun of one of the premier figure skaters as she is, for some reason, giving a lecture about politics from an Olympic podium. This is Amber Glenn in a speech. This is about a minute long, but one, it's what you're missing out if you don't follow us on social media, and two, I think it's kind of funny. We were playing Lib Buzzword Bingo. This is cut 13.
Yeah, it's been a hard time for the community overall under this administration. It isn't the first time that we've had to come together as a community and try and fight for our human rights. And now, especially, it's not just affecting the queer community, but many other communities. And I think that we are able to support each other in a way that we didn't have to before, and because of that, it's made us a lot stronger. I hope I can use my platform and my voice throughout these games to try and encourage people to stay strong in these hard times. I know that a lot of people say, you're just an athlete, like stick to your job, shut up about politics, but politics affect us all. It is something that I will not just be quiet about, because it is something that affects us in our everyday lives. So, of course, there are things that I disagree with. But as a community, we are strong and we support each other. And brighter days are ahead of us.
All right, now we were having fun with that, and that video I think is somewhere around 3 or 4 million views on social media. And it obviously is making fun of the ridiculous nonsense that our athletes, for some reason, are spewing. Now, the, I guess, maybe surprising take is this. Yesterday, during the women's short program figure skating, the girl that was giving that big lib talk with all the lib buzzwords, because she is a lib, finished 13th. One of the favorites to win, but didn't land a specific jump, and things go wrong when you're competing in an Olympic sport, and did not medal and didn't even really come close. Failed to meet expectations by a lot, and obviously she was very, very emotional about it. And what I'd like to say is that while we can make fun of people, and we should make fun of libs, at the end of the day, they're still Americans. I've been saying this since the beginning of the Olympics this cycle. I don't really particularly care, unless they're saying stuff like literally like death to America, which I don't think it's gotten that far, thankfully. I want Americans to win. And honestly, when she had that terrible performance, she was clearly very emotional. I genuinely felt bad, because not only is this an American, it's a person, and we can disagree with things. And, I think we probably do benefit from offering that sort of grace to our fellow countrymen. Now, if she's a Chinese commie, no, I'm not offering the same, because what's her face, Goo, did not do very well, and good. But Amber Glenn is an American, and because obviously she didn't achieve the goals that she achieved, and she's representing us as a country, whether or not we agree with her politically, I feel bad. So just wanted to say that. Kind of interesting. I want Americans to win. I also want them to not run their mouth about lib nonsense on the podium of the Olympics, but still want them to win. TPT at TPUSA.com if you happen to disagree. We'll be right back with Mailbag after the break. Don't go away.
Welcome to Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with this Real America's Voice, Real Minute. Most people know the biblical story of David, the shepherd boy who fought Goliath and became king. Well, Angel Studios has created a new animated film called David that tells the story of Israel's greatest king.
There's a light I've always followed when I'm looking for the way, when I'm searching for the answer, in the moments I'm afraid. There's a whisper in the wind and a story in the sky, when I'm looking for a lantern to illuminate the night. If you want the secret of freedom and feeling alive, you gotta follow the light. Follow the light.
For those who love great animated classics like The Lion King and Prince of Egypt, David is an awe-inspiring animated musical that depicts David as a spirited boy who fought lions, giants, and even betrayal, depicting how one boy's faith could lead him to be king of Israel. David will be released in theaters just in time for Christmas on December 19th, but your family can get a head start by watching the prequel to the film, Young David, which is streaming exclusively right now on Angel. It's perfect for the entire family and has memorable music. So once you join the Angel Guild, you can start watching Young David right now and prepare the fam for the David film in theaters in December. And by joining the Guild, you'll guarantee 2 free tickets to see it. And it's a great value. Let's be honest, going to the movies isn't all that cheap. But if you're a member of the Angel Guild, not only do you get those 2 free tickets to David, but you'll now have access to every single film or TV series on Angel at your convenience anytime. So just go to angel.com/Rav and join there.
Through every storm, every moment of uncertainty,
Everybody needs to pray for Charlie Kirk right now.
Rav has stood strong.
We're not going to tolerate this stuff anymore.
Turn that anger into motivation to save this nation.
When we move together, there is power.
The cries of this women.
There's a difference between African and Black American?
Yeah.
There's a difference?
Big difference.
What's the difference?
We are very calm. They are always with temper.
Who?
I'm not calling the names.
Say it. Say what you
Don't make me racist.
Oh, that's needs no further explanation. I don't want to get to mailbag so we can get to some of the fun stuff here. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I have solicited disgusting, vile, bigoted, and nasty emails, and said, too, that if you send an email, nasty, disgusting, vile, and bigoted, we actually will read it on the show because it fits right in with what we do here. Jeff, you may have outdone us. Jeff sent an email pretty much in full agreement of the Chi-Com that is competing for China, that lives in California and is very, very wealthy somehow, probably due to parental ties to the CCP. But he sent an email that, Jeff, I genuinely cannot read this. I don't necessarily disagree, but he ends the email with, how's that? That is exactly what we're looking for. Producer Glenn is reading the email and both laughing and blush red because of how disgusting it actually is. But at the same time, if we were to extract the point that Jeff was trying to make, spot on. Yeah. Deport her. How's that is great. Stacy says, great job detailing all of this out in the general public. She was totally installed. She says, I never watched the show, but I will now. And then this is the best compliment that people give. Charlie would have loved the segment. Really well done. Thank you so much, Stacy. Really appreciate that. Mark, on the last here to topic, on the topic of the Olympics specifically, he says she's a result of the changes over the years. There are way too many sports being added. This used to be, the origins were individual amateur athletics. Not just, now it's just a show for the pros. Yeah. The 92, was it 92? The Dream Team, the basketball team. Actually, there's a nice little soliloquy, I believe, in the end of the movie Miracle, which is the United States beating the Soviet Union in hockey at Lake Placid in whatever year that was. And it ties up saying, you know, people talk about dream teams, but it's kind of ironic because the amateurs then seldom get to dream because it's taken up by the pros. And that, unfortunately, yeah, is what the Olympics has become. I would love to get back to people representing their country and not just out for individual glory and going to compete for countries who don't need them and they don't need to go to because she's good enough to compete here. So that's all we're going to have time for. Actually, really quick, Dean, venting about Minnesota. I agree with you, dude. You'll know what I mean, and nobody else will. tpt@tpusa.com is the email address. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America.
Real America's Voice is growing, and now it's all in one place. Introducing the new and improved RAV app, built for access, community, and choice, not paywalls. Here's the key. RAV is still free to watch. No sign-in, no membership required. Your favorite live streams, breaking coverage, and video on demand are all right there. Free, just like always.
For the War Room Posse, we have to be a force multiplier on this. We have to stick the landing.
In the White House, in the Oval Office, you're crushing it, my friend.
And if you want more, the members section is your backstage pass. Get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and videos, insider moments from the studio and the field, and early access to new content before it goes public. Members can also unlock special experiences like virtual meet and greets, member-only auctions, and select